But I'm going to tell you this, we ain't done yet.
Howdy, and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. I'm Will Stone down here in Hutto. He is Chase Caldwell up in Waxahachie.
He's Will Stone.
We appreciate you joining us today as we move along our positional preview series. We're going to talk receivers and tight ends today. We have a lot to talk about, but first, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and leave us a review. Leave us a rating, 5 stars, please, if you could be so kind. Send us some questions if you want to do. You can email us at ineligiblepod or comment on our Facebook page or text us. Whatever floats your boat. We're down with whatever. But
send us recommendations on what you want us to talk about too. I've had several people do that here lately, and it's kind of made us say, "Oh, that would be a great topic for an episode." Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're open to all kinds of criticisms, all kinds of ideas. We just want this to be a good listening experience for all of y'all.
Yeah, and as much stuff as we do have planned for the summer that we're excited about, we're always open to suggestions and we want to talk about what you want to hear about. So please, shoot us an email, comment on our posts. Yeah, so getting right into it. Let's start with receivers, and we'll do tight ends after that. But I think my first thought on receivers is that it's kind of been a contentious topic around Jimbo and Jimbo's offense. He had some really good receiver play in 2013 when they won the championship, but it kind of fell off after that at Florida State and hasn't been the best here at A&M. And he's recruited exceptionally well at dang near every position, but hasn't quite reached that elite level at receiver. He's brought in some elite level players, but maybe not the number that is required to really compete at the highest level.
Yeah, I would say some part of that has to do with the style of play. We really had a big stylistic change whenever we went from Sumlin to Jimbo. I look back, my buddy Mac, when we would play NCAA football, there was some times where he would run Notre Dame. He would play as Notre Dame, and he would run the clock out, and it would just wear you out because you could not beat him. But he would just run it down your throat, a little chunk, 3, 4, 5-yard plays, and you couldn't stop him, and you couldn't stop that clock, and it was very frustrating. And in a lot of ways, Jimbo, his offense seems to be that style. But I know that there's at least a desire and really a need for us to have really good receiver play that would really, really benefit our team. And I think some of that. So again, I think part of it has to do with stylistic play. When the Aggies are looking at it, it's like, oh, it's a little bit more boring to watch these teams play because it's not, throwing the ball way down the field every play. But at the same time, some of it has to do with we just haven't really seemed to put it all together at that position either. So there's a little bit of both there. But I would probably attribute more of it to that we haven't had just really good players or really good performers, because we do have really good talent at that position. But
Right.
And maybe it's not as talented as maybe, say, running backs are. So it's a position that is a contentious point. It's a contentious point because when we do bring in really good players, you might not see them on the field very often. Damon Demas is a great example of that. I think every Aggie, myself included, when you would get frustrated at a game, it'd be like, put Demas in. Well, there's probably a reason why he's not on the field that the average fan just doesn't know about. But you would like to see us have some better receiver play, and I think we will have a little bit of that this year. So let's start. Let's start with Anais Smith. On kind of how we can utilize him. Tell us what you foresee us changing at the receiver position. In terms of utilization, and maybe start with Anais Smith on how we're going to use him in our offense.
Well, yeah, I guess like my initial thought is that I'm actually pretty excited about this group of receivers. I think it has the potential to be a big change from what we've seen so far. I think this group is finally healthy. I think there are some exciting young players. You mentioned Demas. We'll definitely get to him in this episode. But man, Anais Smith, I can't say enough about the guy. I honestly think he may be my favorite player at A&M, like, of all time. And it's just like
Wow.
his attitude, like you hear him talking in an interview and you see the way he plays, like he genuinely loves football, and you don't see that with all these with every college player, which is crazy because I feel like if you played high school ball, like you'd probably kill to go and play college somewhere and things like that, but not every talented player is in love with the game. But Anais absolutely is. He loves it. You can tell. He plays with a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and he's an outstanding offensive player. Exceptionally quick. I feel like the guy is he's always open. Like he's so difficult to cover because of that quickness. He played and he's smart. Like he played running back last year and made a seamless transition over to receiver for the rest of the year, basically. And I think he's going to be a big part of this offense. I definitely see him as being a go-to guy early on for whichever young quarterback wins this battle. But he's an exciting player. I think this is probably his last year in an A&M uniform, which is sad to say, but I think he's going to have a very long and very productive career after he leaves.
Yeah, I love watching him play for the same reasons that you said. He's a football player through and through.
Mm-hmm.
You can put him in every position just about. He just has that it factor. And that's why he's a very reliable guy. You can put him at running back and he's gonna get some good runs in. You can put him at slot and he's gonna be open. But he does strike me as that type of guy that is just loves the game of football and just wants to learn everything he possibly can about it. That's what you hear in Jimbo's press conferences where he references him, where he talks about the guy. He just makes it seem as if he's the type of guy that really digs in, wants to learn more so than what he has to learn. And whenever I was an equipment manager, I saw a lot of players that were like that. I saw the players that would come to practice, they would play, practice, and then they'd go straight back to the locker room. And then there was some receivers who would come and find me or another manager and say, "Hey, can we get on the jugs machine for a little while?" And there were a few, like Christian Kirk always did that. Where he would come out to the field early before practice sometimes, depending on the type of practice. Most of the times they had meetings right before, so it wasn't very common. But if it was like summer workouts or something like that where the players are not being coached, they're just doing it on their own, he would be out there early working, and he would stay afterwards and catch balls. And Speedy did that a lot too. There was just several players that you could tell they just really loved the game of football, and they just wanted to have football in their hands at all point in time. And
Yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say that like he's in his third year now, and like I think it's pretty apparent that he's taken on a leadership role on this team. I think the other guys look up to him. And
Yeah.
I think he's probably he's probably like the guy that gets the people going.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
he's where the energy starts. Like he's the firecracker of the group.
Yeah.
Um, my other note on his just his raw ability. He played running back, played receiver. If they asked him to go play defense for one game and say, hey, go cover the best receiver on so and so team, he could go do that. Like
Yeah. You really feel like he could.
yeah.
Um, and that's what I like about him. Um, I feel like he was one of the first, if not the first, other than maybe Isaiah Spiller because he had to, but he was seemingly the first player in his class that actually saw real playing time, and that spoke volumes because he wasn't the highest rated recruit in his class. You take like in years past when we didn't have depth at a position, but we got a really good 5-star player, 4-star player that we knew was going to come in and be really, really, really good. You knew that they were going to see the field first, and a lot of times they did. In his case, he wasn't the guy of the class. If
It
anything,
definitely surprised me.
he was kind of one of the lower ones in the class in terms of like actual ranking. But whenever the fall camp started and Jimbo started talking about players that were really performing well in fall camp, all of a sudden you hear his name all the time. And
Yeah.
then lo and behold, he's the first one on the field. And you just you look at it like in business or just in everyday life outside of football. You see those people who really, really, really dig in. Like me, I'm a financial advisor. I see other financial advisors that just eat, sleep, and breathe finance, and you look up to. You can't help but to look up to them because you're like, man, where do you get all of that energy? And I would love to just have 1% of the energy that you bring to this, and I would be ultra successful. And of course, those people always end up being ultra successful. And he just seems like that guy on the team that maybe he wasn't the most talented, maybe he wasn't, the highest rated or anything like that, but he's going to be the hardest worker and he's going to
Yeah.
outwork everybody. And that's where you've seen he's been a really good example of that.
Yeah. No, he's definitely one of my favorite players in recent memory, and definitely on this current team. And I expect even bigger things this year than we saw last year out of him. I think he's going to make a ton of plays and really help this team out.
Yeah.
A few other guys. I guess let's talk about the starters. Off of last year's team, and Hezekiah Jones and Chase Lane. Chase Lane gets overlooked a little bit, and I don't know if it's because he was I guess like a nice, he was a lower rated guy coming out, but the dude was clutch last year. Like there were so many times where like it was like a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, and Chase Lane comes up with a big catch, and it wasn't always like an easy catch. He wasn't just wide open or things like that, but whenever the offense needed him, he would make a big play and move the chains.
Yeah, I've got to like him. I mean, he's got a really strong name. He but yeah, he was a very dependable guy. And I always like I of course love like ballers at skill positions. Like it's fun. They're just fun to watch. But I like knowing that there's a guy over there that if we just need 3 yards, he's going to get it for us. If you throw the ball to him, he's going to catch it. And he would probably be the one. Him and Hez Jones both, but him probably more so would be the guy that I'm like, if I need to just get some yards, I'm going to get it over to him. And I know that he's going to catch it. I know that he's going to be there. Jamon Osborne was that guy before. I really thought he was a very dependable guy that you could throw to when you needed to. and even if it's a contested catch, he's going to make it.
Yeah.
And that's what I see a lot in Chase Lane. But he's fast too.
He does. He is fast. Yeah.
So he has. I think he's one that he's not going to be. He's not going to be your all-star, player that they're going to try to shut down every single play. But he's one that you get him the right touch on the ball, you get him just enough space, and he can really make a play.
Yeah.
But even if you don't need that, if you just need a few yards, you just need a catch, he's one that I would be looking at if I was a quarterback.
Yeah, he really showed that speed against Mississippi State last year. I know Kellen hit him in stride on a crossing route, and he toasted the Mississippi State defense on the way to it.
I was going to say that was Mississippi State, wasn't it? He had a great game that game.
Yeah, he did. And then like in games like Florida and Auburn, it's like it's 3rd and 8, and on the game-winning drive against Florida, it was 3rd and 8. And he caught a big pass for a conversion. If he doesn't make that play, it's like a 50-plus yard field goal to go up in that game and win the game. So thankfully he was able to move the chains, and A&M was able to kill a bit more clock and get even closer and closer, and then ended up hitting the game winner as time expired. But I think people forget that he is he's the same age as Anias, but he didn't play much I don't think he played at all as a freshman. He was a redshirt freshman last year, getting his first real experience. So it's reasonable to believe that he will, he should improve even more this season. But and then you got Hez Jones. I think is he a 6th-year guy? He's been around for a minute.
He's been around for a while.
Yeah, but he's battled some injury in his time, and I think last year he finally got healthy and did some good things. He's also got some of that speed that Chase Lane has to stretch the defense a bit, and we didn't always see it at times last year. And I know if you watched the spring game, you may have been cursing Hez because I think he had 3 or 4 drops. But on the other hand, like he was the only guy getting wide open, so
Yeah.
He actually can get some separation and make some big plays.
Yeah, and he's a tough player too. Like he's got good size to him, and you just feel like you could throw it to him maybe on the outside or whatever, and him really be able to get a few yards and maybe break that first contact. Just because he's almost built like a running back, I think. But he can create some separation. Drops are drops, that'll happen.
And it's a spring game, and he's a veteran.
And yeah, I mean he's worked with several different quarterbacks, and you got to get a little bit of that rhythm with each other too. So I think he's a good player and one I would consider him still dependable. Just like I said with Chase Lane.
Yeah.
But
let's talk about a few guys that may break into that rotation. Do you want Caleb Chapman or Damon Demas first?
Let's go Chapman.
Chapman, okay.
Yeah.
So Chapman, he came in 18. So yeah, he's a 4th-year player at this point. You will probably remember him from the Florida game where he made a couple of big-time plays down the field, and that is what we've been expecting out of him for a long time. He's had some unfortunate injuries, and like not just the one last year, but in Jimbo's first year, I think Kendrick Rogers after the Clemson game was a bit banged up, and Chapman was set to start against Arkansas, and he tore his ACL that week and didn't get to play. So that definitely set him back, and he came on strong against Florida last year, and then his season ended in that game as well. So from what I've heard, he should be healthy and ready to go by fall camp. But this is a big time receiver. I mean, he's 6'4". He can run like a deer. He can go up and get the ball. He's got great hands. I think he can be a really big weapon and an awesome deep threat for this offense.
Yeah, he's incredibly fast. He's got some. Uh, I hate the injury bug. I hate it for any player whatsoever.
Hmm.
He's got some past history of that, so you got to worry about that, of course. But even past that, it's just more of um, he had a really stellar game against Florida. Um, you hope that that's what you see more of when he comes back. But it's hard to know what you're going to see whenever a player comes off an injury. Are they going to be the same player they were before? And you go that long without playing football. I mean, when these guys are injured, they're not out there practicing. They will be out there with the strength and conditioning coaches trying to, get their strength built back up and wherever the injury is. But you kind of you could develop some rust. I'm not going to put that on him. I do think that he'll come out and be a good player. But my hope for him is that he saw how great he can be, especially on the national stage. He was on every highlight on ESPN that week of the Florida game. Aggies have been just really pumping him up because he is a really good player, and so I hope that he can come back at full strength, and just be that player for us all throughout the season.
I feel like you and I are hitting our stride as a podcast team because I was about to say that exact same thing.
Were you?
Yeah, like I was about to say, like I bet he's more motivated than ever because he saw, like he realized his ability, in a big time game
Yeah.
against a top 5 team, and like you said, on national television. So um, he's
Well,
got
and I
every right.
think I think injuries really can create that in a player. You finally, like you were telling the story of him finally about to get his first start, and then he gets injured. Well, that takes a lot of your confidence away, and it probably makes you a little bit more timid to do some of the things that you would do before injury. Because especially 18, 19-year-old kids. There's a reason why the majority of people who go in the military are 18 and 19, and it's because you think you're invincible and you don't think that you're going to get hurt. So football players are a lot the same way. Like you can kind of feel like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. And so whenever it happens, it's kind of scary if you're naive. I'm not saying he was naive, but it could have been something that kind of took away some of his confidence. Because you saw that early on last year, the first game or two, he had a ton of drops. He was had some times where it was kind of like, what's going on with this guy? And then all of a sudden he played to his ability, and look at it, he was a great player for us for 2 games there. And so
Yeah,
you hope that this second injury, that he went into it with more maturity because he had been there before,
yeah.
and that's what I would expect from him. Of course, it could have taken away some confidence, but I hope and expect that maybe he will come out of this one a lot stronger, because he's been there before, so he probably did a better job at recovery and everything this time than he did even the first time.
Yeah, no, he's got so much potential. I'd love to see him healthy and in full go this fall. I think I said he's 6'4". I'm pretty sure he's 6'5", and he looks every bit of it.
Yeah.
He can really run and get down the field. You saw that against Florida. Big catch radius. Even if the ball's not on the money, he can adjust and haul it in. So super excited about him, and hoping for a full recovery. And from what we've heard, it sounds like that is very much the case.
Yeah.
The next guy we're going to talk about is I don't know if fan favorite's the right word, but just very much anticipated, and that's Damon Demas. He came in the same class as A. Chain and Haynes King, who we talked about in prior episodes. Just a, I mean, just an athletic freak by every measure. You've probably seen the kid on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, doing backflips at some of the camps he went to. But he's every bit of 6'2", maybe 6'2 and a half. I think he's up to 190 pounds, 185 pounds. Popped a 4.4 at one of the camps, vertical jump 40 inches. You can just see by the way he moves. He's not the same as regular human beings or even regular athletes.
For sure. Yeah, he's a mystery to me.
He is.
He doesn't have hardly any film out there at all. It's really hard to track down some of his film from high school. But then you'll see some just insane catches that he makes. And a lot of them are on like 7-on-7 where he's not wearing pads, and things like that. But you'll see him doing backflips. You'll see him, doing round off back handsprings, and stuff just down the field. And you're like, what? He's just insanely athletic. But when you ask any of the experts at evaluating players, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's fantastic. So I fully expect that he's going to be a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
But he's a mystery. It's a mystery to me why he didn't see the field hardly at all last year. I trust Jimbo. I will never question Jimbo. I think he has proved himself, and he will always have my respect. But there's that question in my mind of like, why hasn't he seen the field more if he's such a good athlete?
Yeah.
And it might be. I know he had kind of a interesting pathway to college football that might have hindered him from being if those of you that don't follow recruiting, he moved in between his junior and senior year, and UIL ended up ruling that he wasn't allowed to play his senior year. So they took his last year of high school football away from him. And
that's because the UIL is trash.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, junior NCAA, but
sorry, I took a road, but yeah, they're trash.
Yeah, it just so you hated that for him, but it's been so long since he's played football full out that there is a lot of mystery. Maybe he doesn't perform to his highest caliber this year, but hopefully he does,
Yeah. I think he takes a big step this year and really shows out, but I think I expected too much too soon.
Yeah.
When you look at what he actually did do in high school, I mean, like you said, he didn't get to play at all as a senior, which was very unfortunate. But before that, he went to a high school that's it's just not a very good program. Not a ton of great, he didn't receive a ton of great coaching. And you look at his film and he's making good plays, but he's really just making those based off his raw athleticism. And trust me, even watching that is incredible, because there was one game where I think he had 5 catches for 5 touchdowns. And there's one where he ran across the whole length of the field, and I think he juked out the entire team twice and ended up scoring. And it's just he's just such an insane athlete. And I think if he can get down the technique of being a college receiver, then he's it probably gets said a lot, but the sky is the limit for this kid. He can be as good as Julio Jones, as
he's our Jalen
Jerry
Waddle.
Jeudy, or Devontae Smith. He's got that kind of ability. He just needs to put it all together. And from what we've heard coming out of spring, and I think even Jimbo said it at a coaches' night, that he really impressed in the spring. He was starting to, put in the requisite effort, and stringing together several good practices in a row, not just having one like a good practice here and there. And
Yeah.
like you talk about the clips on YouTube of him, he's been posting clips of his practices here at A&M, and that stuff is freaky. Like the
Yeah.
catches he makes,
Yeah.
like it's insane. But it is a mystery, and we won't really know if he can realize that potential until he does or doesn't. So
Yeah,
definitely a name
and
to watch this year.
and you don't want to limit him before he even starts. It's just at the same time you don't want to get too high on somebody that you've never actually seen play. That's kind of like Haynes King when we talked about him during the quarterbacks episode. Like it's so hard for me not to say he is just going to be so good because we haven't full on seen him play at the college level.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I was senior class president at my high school, and one of my big, like when we went to fish camp and we were doing the dating thing on the bus where you had to do speed dating and learn about these people. Probably 90% of the people on the bus on the way to fish camp were the senior class president at their high school, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's we all did that, I guess,
Yeah.
and that's a way that transition from high school football to college football really is
Yeah.
because these kids go from where they're the best on their team, one of the best in their regional area, and they're nationally famous, and then they come to a team where everybody was the best at their school, best in their region, and they've all been nationally famous, but they've proven it. And so sometimes that can be a hindrance, but I wouldn't say I'll tell you why I don't really expect it to be as much of a hindrance for Damon is because he's played a lot of football outside of just the high school level, like when you look at 7-on-7, Elite 11, things like that. And he's going against the most talented kids in the whole nation. And he was such a freak athlete that they couldn't defend him, And so I've seen insane catches by him. He reminds me, Speedy Noyle used to make the most incredible catches during practice, and you would think like, how does he do that? That's what he reminds me of whenever I see some of these catches that he makes. But he just strikes me as more of a overall freak athlete like Waddle, and I want to see that from him.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know why he wasn't on the field, but we're inclined to kind of get in that rhythm of A&M fans that as soon as we see a 5-star talent hit the locker room, we expect that they're going to be on the field for every single play because that's what we've become accustomed to, And
Right.
so in some ways, it's probably good that he was in the locker room for most of the season, or on the sideline for most of the season,
Yeah.
because it's kind of issuing in the new way of life for the A&M team, and hopefully we do see him, and hopefully he really performs to his full potential by the end of this year.
Yeah.
But I am very, very excited. I feel like I've dogged on him, and I'm not trying to, because he is one that I've been waiting for so long to see him hit the field, and I'm so excited to watch him.
Yeah. I don't want to be too hyperbolic what I'm about to say, but if Chapman gets healthy and returns to form, and Damon Demas, if he even scratches the surface of what he's capable of, that takes his offense to a whole new level. And I think
for sure.
I think it turns his team into a from a top 10 team to more of a top 4, like a top 4 team, like a playoff caliber, like ready to compete for a championship this year kind of team. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited about those guys. Those 5 guys we've talked about so far, we expect they're going to get the lion's share of the snaps and of the targets. That's Anai Smith, Hez Jones, Chase Lane, Caleb Chapman, and Damon Demas. It's a very talented group. That group has a lot of speed. We expect big things out of them this fall. There's a handful of other guys that are pushing to get on the field, and we'll go over them pretty quickly. Jalen Preston is a guy that was a big-time player coming out of Manville, just kind of a do-it-all player in high school. Has been held back a little bit, I guess similar to Demas in just trying to really learn those skills of being a receiver and not just an athlete. Actually looked pretty good in the spring game. I think him and Chapman are the same class, so he's a fourth-year guy, and he's he doesn't want to sit behind these younger guys, so expect him to make a push in the fall. You got anything on Preston before we move on?
No, I am excited about Preston. I think we'll see him at his best. I think he'll have a better season this year than what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Because I do think he's a super talented player, but I don't think we've gotten to see him at his full potential yet.
Yeah.
And I think you probably see some of that this year. Not saying that he's going to be an all-star player, but I think you'll see him more in the vein of Chase Lane and Hez Jones, where he's going to get some good playing time and he's going to be a very reliable person to throw to,
Yeah. Yeah, in the spring, I kept seeing number 5 make plays. And I'm like, who is this kid? I'm like, oh, it's Jalen Preston. He's been here for a minute. And it looks like he may be putting it together finally. A couple of second-year players also, showed pretty well in the spring game, and that's Muhsin Muhammad III, if that name sounds familiar. If you watch football in the 2000s, his dad, Muhsin Muhammad II, was a big-time receiver for the Panthers and the Bears, I believe, and had a pretty good career. So, that's his boy. He plays. He's more of a slot receiver, so he'll be battling with the Nice to get some snaps. But he's a pretty good receiver. Pretty quick, great hands. And then Devin Price is the son of defensive ends coach Terry Price, who's been at A&M for the past decade, I believe. Big kid, 6'3", 205 pounds. Played at Consol, and he's more of a possession guy, not the fastest kid in the world, but that's okay. He can still move the chains, and he's got excellent hands. And he's a guy in the spring game that really made some impressive catches. And the one that stands out the most is he caught a pass over the middle and got absolutely rocked by Damani Richardson, but held onto the ball and made a 20-yard play.
Well, I'm excited about both of those guys. Musa Muhammad is one that you very rarely hear his name here lately, but he's one that I've quietly been really excited to finally see because I just think he has. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. He was one that I was extremely excited about whenever he committed.
Plus, his nickname is Moose, so I like him.
Yeah, there you go. He may show who the real Moose is,
Moose.
But I have to say something about Devin Price.
Okay.
I fitted Devin Price for his very first football helmet.
Really?
Yeah, he was a 8-9-year-old kid whenever I was an equipment manager, and Coach Price, I know Aggies love him. Everybody loves his Twitter, where he's cooking and all that. But let me just tell you, if you don't actually know him personally, he's one of the best human beings ever. He's very gruff. He'll be like, "What are you doing over there?" He always has.
Sounds like the way in the videos they post from practice.
He was the scariest coach for me to meet. They took me to meet him like the very first day, and so I met him, and he was very intimidating. And then on the way, I get on the elevator to head back to the equipment room, and it's just me. And then he gets on, and so I had to sit in the elevator ride with him, and he just would always prod you and all that. But he was such a good guy, and he got on to us one time because one of the defensive managers was cheering whenever there was a touchdown. That happened during team, and he came over and had called a team meeting between all of us, and he was like, I don't ever want to see any of y'all cheering for the offense getting a play. And so then he like made us like whenever the defense would get a play, he would like look at all of us to see if we're all jumping up and down and stuff. So he's just a really fun spirited person.
Oh man.
But I'll tell you what, his kids, Devin and Alex, are two of the most respectable kids or respectful kids that I was ever around. And like, I don't really like kids. So that means a lot coming from me because kids just kind of get on my nerves. But these kids, like, they would always come in the equipment room. They lived in there because that's where the Xbox was, and they would come in and play games with us. And Devin and Alex, they were in there with the Sumlin kids and some of the other kids. They were always such well-behaved kids and just really respectful kids. And so whenever I saw Devin commit to us, I couldn't have been more excited. It was just such a cool story, in my opinion. He grew up in Bright. And I know that, Aggies love Aggie legacies, on the team. But there's no better Aggie legacy than this one. His dad was a great player for us and has been one of the staples in our program for years, his whole life. I mean, he grew up in the Bright complex. And so I just want nothing but success for this kid. And I think that I honestly think that he is going to be a very underrated player. He's going to prove to be an underrated player because I think his dad being a coach and them expecting that he goes to A&M really hindered him in the recruiting process, and I don't think he got as many looks. But I don't think it was a settle thing. I mean, they said multiple times during his recruitment that Jimbo told him, "I don't care who your daddy is, I would have recruited you anyways."
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see him on the field. It just brings joy to me knowing his transition and everything. And I think Alex, his older brother, I think is helping him with the team and stuff. And so talk about just a family culture, to have the Prices. I love that family so much. So I have nothing but good things to say about them.
I really
Sorry,
hope
I know I went long there, but I had to say that. I wasn't gonna not say that part.
No, like that's stuff you can't get anywhere else but the Ineligibles podcast. No, that's excellent insight. You have to love Coach Price. He's on Twitter. He's always grilling, and the food looks bomb. Like I'm waiting to get invited to the D-line cookout.
I'm just curious if he uses meat church seasonings or not.
Right.
If not, Coach Price, if you're listening, you need to use meat church out of Waxahachie. Great.
Yeah.
That is not a sponsor, but
I was about to say, you should get them to sponsor us.
It's kind of the opposite of a sponsor because I spend a lot of money on meat church.
No, I hope. Well, first of all, I hope Coach Price coaches here for a long, long time. But when he does decide to, call it quits and ride off into the sunset, I hope he stays in the Bryan College Station area and opens up a barbecue joint because that would be fire.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Moving on to the next round of guys. I guess these are guys that are a little bit younger and may not see too much playing time this year, but Kenyon Jackson is one. He's a third-year guy from the state of Georgia. 6'6", really a tall, skinny kid. I haven't seen much from him. I think he was out when they had the spring game, so he didn't get to play in that. But he's still an option. He's still there for depth. And then I think we touched on Yul Keith Brown in our running back episode, but we think he'll mostly play receiver. But true freshman, already kind of drawing some rave reviews for his playmaking ability and things of that sort. So look for these names kind of in the future and after this year. But the pipeline looks good at receiver. I think we don't have too much time to get into the recruiting on this receiver class, but it seems like Jimbo has really stepped his game up when it comes to recruiting receivers. I think you'll see this 2022 haul be the best we've had since he's been here. That's not just like me pumping sunshine. That's legit probably going to happen. So we'll touch on that in a later episode and talk about some of those guys. But let's go ahead and move into some tight end talk. Tight end was it's probably had the biggest turnaround of it's either tight end or linebacker. It's had the biggest turnaround from the previous staff to Jimbo Fisher. If you remember the very first spring game under Jimbo, he had brought in Jay Sternberger in his first class, and the first catch that Jace caught in the spring game, the entire crowd stood up and clapped. He was like, "What was that for?" And everyone's like, "We haven't seen a tight end catch a pass in 6 years." So it's definitely a change, and we've got some really talented ones. Our two primary ones we're going to touch on today are Jalen Weidermeyer, who everyone knows, and Baylor Cupp. But Chase, I'll pass it back to you, and you can get started on Jalen.
Yeah. So Jalen's another example of the Aniyah Smith type that we talked about, being just a workhorse. I went to a practice 2 years ago, I guess now, and it was the day after Baylor Cupp had gotten hurt, and it was maybe the day before the news broke on it. Because everybody was like, yeah, so Baylor got hurt yesterday, and I was on my way to practice with him circled as somebody that I could not wait to watch. With Baylor Cupp, I mean, and there was talks then about, well, there's a bit of a drop off. You know, the next guy up is Weidermeyer. He's pretty good. He's just got, you know, some more development to do. Baylor Cupp was ready to start day one, you know, like he's that kind of talent, and he's a really good, you know, really good player from what I've been told. But I went in and we watched Weidermeyer, and I didn't know anything about him at the time, and I was going probably with a just kind of disappointment of, oh dang it, I wanted to come and see how good Baylor Cupp is, and I see Weidermeyer. I thought he was a decent player, but you can't tell all that from practice, especially if you're only going to one practice, you know.
Right.
Could have had an off day or whatever. But I just remember kind of thinking like, oh, okay, you know, tight end's going to be maybe our weak point this year. And then he came out and set I hate to say set the world on fire because I keep saying that whenever we're talking about different players. But I mean, there wasn't much of a drop off from Sternberger to him. I mean,
No, he balled out.
Became one of our star players, and then so going into last year, that's all I could think about. And I know that you and I talked about that multiple times. I'm like, people don't realize that Baylor Cupp is probably going to be a better player than Weidermeyer, and Weidermeyer is one of our star players. He's so uber talented,
right? And
Baylor Cupp had those tools first, so he might very well be more talented. Well, then he gets hurt again,
yeah.
And you know, so now here I am a year later, gonna say the same thing. Weidermeyer now, I don't expect that Baylor Cupp comes out and is better than Weidermeyer, because you just can't. That SEC experience that Weidermeyer has, I mean, he's just he's a workhorse. He's one of the guys on our teams that are on our team that we I feel like we develop our playbook around because he's that
a
good.
go-to guy.
Yeah, and so I guess kind of what I'm looking at is now, you know, going into that 2019 season, I was thinking, okay, Baylor Cupp's going to be the guy to replace Sternberger, and Weidermeyer will be a good, you know, backup. I'm kind of reversed on that now, where I'm saying Weidermeyer's the guy. I mean, he's fantastic. Everybody's seen him. I'm not telling you anything you haven't seen.
Yeah.
But Baylor Cupp should be almost the same level of talent, and so if we had to sub the two out, there's not going to be much of a drop off. But what I'm excited about seeing on that is is to see if we go with any two tight end sets where we have both of them out there on the field. And so I love Weidemeyer. I think he epitomizes this transition to Jimbo. He's a tight end. Like you said, we went so long without a tight end. But not only is he a tight end, he's a tremendous tight end and one of the best in the country. He will make a lot of money one day in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can say the same about Baylor at the end of this year.
Yeah, like you're already seeing, you're seeing Weidemeyer pop up on all these preseason All-American teams. He'll definitely be preseason All-SEC when that time comes around. But no, I'm a big fan of Jalen. From the moment I saw him against Alabama, I'm like, he's a dude. That is a football player. He's kind of a throwback tight end. Like he would have been a first round pick like 10 or 15 years ago. Like he's your traditional, 6'5", big bodied dude, not a burner, but can still get open. He's got flypaper hands, catches everything that gets close to him. He wasn't a great blocker as a freshman, but he really stepped it up this past season and turned into an excellent blocker. So he's really a do-it-all, like old school traditional tight end. And I don't know if he's a first rounder, just because the NFL today seems to place a premium on speed, and Weidermeyer's not going to run the world's fastest 40. He's not slow, but he's just not Kyle Pitts or like a Travis Kelce or someone else that you might see in today's NFL. But definitely a valuable weapon, and especially for this team, and he'll definitely get drafted next year, and I think fairly highly. As far as Baylor Cup, I know people that follow it as closely as you and I do are well aware of Baylor Cup, but in case you're not, he came in the same class as Jalen. I think he was a 5-star. He was definitely, he was the number one tight end in the country. Just an athletic freak. I mean, he's 6'6". He's really filled out now. I think he's probably pushing 250 pounds, but extremely fast. Can run a 4.5. Can jump through the gym. I say the gym. He can jump through the roof. Good explosive ability. Like, he is a special athlete, and we just haven't seen what he can do. Because he's not. I wouldn't say he's injury prone. I think he's just been really unlucky. It seems like both accidents have been kind of freak things. Like when he broke his foot, like if that was anybody else, like their foot's getting broke. Like, it's not that he's made of glass or anything. So, but it seems like he's healthy. He's a full go. I think they arrested him in the spring just as a precaution, or at least they arrested him in the spring game as a precaution. I think he was able to practice quite a bit. So, I think we do see a lot of two tight end sets. I think they were planning on it last year until he got hurt in last fall camp. But he definitely brings a different element than Weidermeyer, and I think he's a guy that can stretch the field with that speed. And I almost don't want to make this comparison because this other guy's such a generational player, but he's more in the mold of a Kyle Pitts than maybe some other tight ends. Like he's really he's a big receiver, but he can also block. Like, he's got the same like catch radius, long arms. He's probably not as fast as Pitts, and like Pitts was just an unreal talent. I'm not saying that I expect Cup to be that right away, but he's just got some freakish athletic ability, and I think we see it on display this fall.
Yeah, I agree. And really, I'm looking at all 5 of our tight ends. We've got Weidemeyer, Cup, Blake Smith, Max Wright, and Crownover. I see Blake Smith and Max Wright as being more blocking tight ends, where Weidemeyer and Cup are more of a threat, like a receiving threat. Baylor Cup definitely seems to be a lot faster of a tight end, like would be, even more of a threat in terms of that. But Weidermeyer's that reliable guy. So what I see with the group as a whole is we've got two sets, like depending on what we need, and I just feel like our depth at that position is really really good, and I think it'll help alleviate some of the question marks we have at receiver, just because if we have any issues with the receiver, we can go back to tight ends and running the ball, and we can rely on that heavy to where guys like Demas and Chapman and Chase Lane, they can get down the field more. Anias can get open a lot more. So I'm really excited at just the diversity that we have on our team. That we could go 22 personnel with 2 tight ends and 2 running backs, and what would that be? 1 receiver.
Yeah.
like that old school football. We could, if we did that, we would have super talent, because we would have maybe Weidermeyer and Cup there, but then we would have Anias or Isaiah Spiller and A-Chain back behind it, with maybe Demas or Anias or somebody like that on the edge. Like, that's still very threatening. But then switch it up and let's go, just with 1 running back and no tight end at all, or maybe just 1 tight end, 11 personnel.
Yeah.
Like you have one of these 2 guys that can go in there and give you a threat, but then you've got these receivers that we can rely on. So I do think that we have a lot of diversity, and that's my last point, Will, is that Max Wright seems to be somebody that everybody on the team loves. He just seems kind of like a Gilly character. And Blake Smith, I've heard really good things about how good he is at blocking. So those 2 guys, I wouldn't count out at all. I think you see plenty of playing time from each one of them, and we might even play them at a fullback position too.
And shout out to Max Wright. Like, he was a big time defensive end recruit coming out of high school, and he battled some injuries, and it wasn't really working out on defense, and Jimbo came to him and was like, hey, like, do you want to make the move to tight end and possibly get on the field that way? And it seems like he's been fully committed to that. And man, in the spring game, like, I think Weidermeyer was out, Cup was out, and Blake Smith was out, so he was the only tight end available, and he was making some plays. Like, he plays with a ton of effort. He just seems like a good person to have around the team. Like you said, like, I think the other players like him, and he may play some fullback. Like, he's got kind of that build to where, if we want to go with Weidermeyer and Cup at the 2 tight ends, you can bring him in as a fullback and block for one of our awesome backs that we've talked about. But I definitely agree with your point. Like, as we wrap up our talk about our skill positions, like, there's a lot of guys in these positions with a lot of talent and a lot of different skill sets. Like, I bet Jimbo is doing backflips just thinking about the different things he can do with this personnel and how he can challenge defenses and things like that. Like, it's a really talented group, and it's a group that Aggie fans should be excited about. I do want to mention real quick before we get off of here, as far as tight end recruiting and the pipeline, I think that you most likely see Weidermeyer go to the next level after this season. I think Cup sticks around. I think he'll want his chance to be the guy, and he currently has no collegiate film, so I expect him to be back. And then after him, in the 2022 class, we've got the number 1 tight end in the country committed. Went to the same high school as Jalen Weidermeyer. That's Dickinson down by the coast. Sorry, I didn't say the guy's name. It's Donovan Green is the tight end, and he is he's a player. He's a dude, 6'4", 220. Not super similar to Jalen. Like, he's probably a little bit better athlete and a little bit smaller frame, but excellent tight end, extremely willing blocker, great speed, great hands, great prospect. Like Jimbo's gotten to this thing to the point where he can go target whoever the best tight end in the country is and say, hey, like, if you want to be featured, this is the offense you want to play in. And I think that's pretty attractive to a high school tight end. But
Yeah, no doubt.
these have been fun. I'm loving these episodes. You know, we've talked quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, all the guys that get all the glory. So our next one is going to be my favorite position, offensive line. Probably the most vital position to your overall offensive success, and keeping your quarterback upright. So we're definitely excited about that. And Chase, have you got any parting words on the skill guys?
No, other than I can't wait to watch him play.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, once again, we appreciate you joining us and sticking around and hearing what we have to say about this A&M team. Like we've said 100 times so far, this is a very talented roster and very talented team. We expect big things, and we're very excited to see the results on the field this fall. Go follow our channels, our pages at Ineligible Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But yeah, we will see you next week. We're talking SEC East breakdown next. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.